Bandsaws were designed to cut curves, that's great. Often we don't want a straight line. If we do want a straight line, we can use the slide that we saw in the last video that was, we can load it onto here. A couple of things with the slide actually, one is that if you need it very, very close, with this particular machine you are going to have to lift the guard up. Now, I'll show you, when you thread it on, you need to thread it on at the back as well as at the front, or it won't run things square. And if I want to cut, say, 10 millimeters off here, I could set it there and cut 10 millimeters off the edge. But if for some reason I need to just cut in here, I'm going to have to lift the blade out of the way, the guard out of the way, which I can do so that I can get my guide. Sometimes call it a slide, sometimes call it a guide, but we need to get this in, sit it next to wherever my line might be marked, lock that off. Now, can I get a finger there? No. What if I only had a narrow piece of stock and there's no other way to hold it? Well, on our machines, we have a bunch of these. You can see plastic ones and you can see wooden ones. The wooden ones you can cut into. They are push sticks, they're labelled as push sticks, they're bright pink or red, they usually hang by every machine, and you can just use those or even a pair of those to operate in those places where you know that the work needs to be controlled, you cannot put your hand, you're going to use one of these. Now if you ram that through the blade, that's not a problem. Okay, we remake them all the time, that's what they're for. But if you're cutting curved stock, you can't use the guide, so we'll slide that out of the way. You won't need the push stick necessarily. If I were to push this straight in and turn, what would happen?
The blade will snap?
The blade will snap. First of all, the blade will twist, so I'll show you what that looks like, and I'll leave the guide up a fraction so you can see what that looks like. I'm not going to do it with it running, because it actually will break, but I'll show you, if I push in and then quickly turn, I'm going to bend that blade. And you're going to hear one of two things when you're in running risk of doing that. Number one, it's either going to start to squeal because the sides of that blade are rubbing up against the wood and there's no teeth cutting anymore, or it's going to go silent because it's not cutting anymore. Okay, so if you hear the bandsaw get much louder or much quieter while you're cutting, you are turning the work too tight without moving forward. Now we can turn, but we're moving forward at the same time. What is the risk? Let's say I start here. What is the risk as I start to turn if I'm in and I'm turning? What have you noticed? So my thumb has just travelled across the path of the blade. All right, so when we're operating, sometimes we can't have a hand both on either side of the blade. Sometimes we can, but often we end up feeding the work slightly like that so that we don't turn our own hand into the blade. Okay, but I'll show you a curve roughly on this because there's a maximum, and I'll try to make it squeal or go silent too much, and I'll try to back it off a little bit, and you'll be able to see what's too tight a curve for it. We didn't get a lot of noise, we got a bit of silence there, and in here it's polished, and it's polished because it's been rubbing on the edge of the blade. It's not healthy for the machine at all. We'll encourage that blade to snap, and when they go they bang. It's not that great, and they're expensive too. And in here it started to burn the wood. Okay, so a corner like that is too tight, and an internal corner like that is too tight, and that's about the curve that you're going to get. Now if you need to do a tighter curve than that, what we do is we cut what's called a release angle. So if I were to draw on, has anyone got a pencil nearby? if I were to draw on an angle that I would like, because I've done my design already and I would like this, and I know that I cannot get this machine to cut that curve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in straight lines and do something called retract the blade, straight lines and retract the blade, and I'm cutting some little releases so that when I come around, I might even do more than that, so that when I come around here, these pieces of wood fall out of the way and release the pressure off the blade. Okay, so you can get a result of tight corners, but you need to do it smart by cutting in release angles. Retracting is allowed. You can, I'll drop that guard now, you can cut straight lines and come back straight out of them, but you need to be careful that you follow the path that you went in. So we'll do a couple of release angles and I'll show you that one, tighter curve. So just there where it started to get a bit silent, and then I met up with one of my release cuts, and that piece became loose and it would have fallen out of the way if it had somewhere to go. You can get things a bit trapped there and then you can't work until you stop the machine. It slows down to a stop completely and you come and pick that out of the way. Okay, so you might have a little bit of work to do to clear stock, but if you are cutting in release angles, you can get quite a tight curve with these machines. Okay, if you have, thanks. If you